All right, welcome to Desert Blockchain, our May session. My name is Jay Carpenter, founder of Desert Blockchain, and this is Desert Blockchain Camp 27th and Georgia in Phoenix, Arizona. And tonight we're going to be talking about veterans, careers, and decentralization. And we have some guests with us. We have Adam Morton and Abe McCann. So why don't you guys come on up and I'll continue talking a little bit about how the evening's going to go. Welcome. And we are grateful to Acronis for sponsoring us tonight. And we're looking forward to working with Acronis on some projects and some collaborations. So this is kind of the start of that initiative. And basically, so the way the evening is going to go is we're going to talk a little bit about Skill Bridge, which is a program that Adam's a part of now with Acronis and some of the opportunities with that. We're going to talk about the Arizona Coalition, which Abe is with, and some of the opportunities in that realm. And then the last segment is we're going to talk about some of the opportunities for exploring how blockchain might fit into some of the administrative services, maybe for the Veterans Administration, as well as take a look at some of the projects veterans have started with blockchain and decentralization. So any questions about all of that before we get started? Okay, just a couple things. Number one is the restrooms are outside in the building just to the south, except for the men's. We had sort of a half restroom men's. We are in this massive warehouse, which is hopefully the start of a collaborative workspace for blockchain-centric projects. And you could go to Desert Blockchain, sign up for the meetup, and follow along in terms of what we're going to be creating. But we definitely are inviting people to make suggestions. What would you like to see? What would you like to experiment with here? And this is your opportunity to get involved with the decentralization of the blockchain community here in Phoenix and Arizona. So above and beyond that, we also on July 27th, we'll be having what's called the Arizona Blockathon. And that's an event that's designed for developers and designers to get together and come up. Well, we have some workshops in the morning where you talk about different blockchain technical pieces. For instance, Julian's here. He talked about ZK snarks, the last one. I talked about something called IPFS, the Interplanetary File System, and some projects in that realm. We break into teams, then we go to lunch, and we come back in the afternoon. We ideate and maybe even come up with a little bit of code for projects. But the opportunity for the July 27th event is to look at some public administration projects that the developer community might get involved with. And that could be anywhere from, like, the Arizona Corporation Commission has announced that they want to experiment with blockchain for their records management. That's a project that we might be able to experiment with. There are other initiatives. Congressman David Schweikert is talking regularly now about the possibility of incorporating blockchain with something called the Real ID Act, where in short order you're going to have to basically register your driver's license in order to be able to use that to get on an airplane. And that's a whole identity piece that we might be able to experiment with blockchain and basically see how the whole public administration sector might be enhanced with blockchain. So we're kind of a small group, and it would part of the opportunity set for these events is to kind of get to know one another and what we're interested in. So my request is that we go around the room and kind of introduce ourselves and basically say what you're interested in, what you might need help with in the blockchain space. If you're working on a project, let us know about that. And basically we'll get to, who knows what would become those introductions. So Scott, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'm Scott Thompson. I work currently as a programmer for Public Services. I'm a developer. The project I'm working on right now is IM Intelligent Mining. We are working solar and thermodynamics to reduce the cost of mining for cryptos. And that's just a start. Then we will start developing our own blockchains and other projects based off of that. So,
cool. So anybody interested in mining should talk with you.
and if anybody finance, that's kind of one, we're a startup, and that's kind of the one. We don't have had one, but we find a nice person with that aspect of it. So right now we have the clearance with SEC to raise about 50 million, so that's kind of throughout right now going through investors when that budget is. So I think that's the last person week, but after that, anybody wants to get involved in programming is part of the
Cool, awesome. And feel free to post that on the meetup that, that's what you're interested in. We don't take any and all announcements on the meetup page because there's a lot of, things that are posted on there that kind of spam, but something like that's awesome. And we'd love to encourage people to connect with you. So, cool. Yes.
My name's Darren. I'm a student at ASU, junior in computer science. Honestly, don't know that much about blockchain.
Neither do we. You're among friends here.
My interests lie mainly in big data and machine learning.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Is this your first time at a Desert Blockchain event?
Yeah, this is the first meetup I've ever been to. So.
Oh, really? Awesome. Well, thank you for coming.
Thanks, Rob.
Ravi?
I'm Ravi. I'm into infrastructure, community. I'm into blockchain. I want to learn real use cases for developing countries or in the payment sector. So that's why I'm interested in learning more.
So big data use cases.
Big data is one mostly in the payment, B2B or B2C payment, and people like there's a lot of development there. There is various spaces. So that's where I want to learn and take this and apply there or develop their product. So that's what
Cool. And you're interested in participating in the next blockathon,
Yes.
right? On July 27th. Awesome. So I don't have a meetup set up for that yet, but watch for it. That'll be announced pretty soon. So, Chet.
So Chester Kinnick, or Chet, I'm a professor of cybersecurity over at Grand Canyon University, and I'm interested in the research of blockchain and machine learning, artificial intelligence, and possible cryptography uses and integrity. I know that's a mouthful, so that's what I'm interested in.
Cool. And this is your first Desert Blockchain?
Yeah, this is my first Desert Blockchain, so I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say.
Cool. Awesome. Niles.
I'm Niles Quarter. I'm a high schooler, and I kind of just want to learn more. And I'm interested in like open source and like federalization. It's pretty interesting. And, I like programming.
Niles is amazing. He amazes me with his knowledge in this area. So if you want to learn something, ask Niles. So, Julian.
Julian, I'm a programmer. I play with zero knowledge proofs, DK snarks. Looking into like post quantum stuff like in true crime right now, other crypto stuff. But,
Yeah, if you're not familiar with zero knowledge proofs, anybody heard of zero knowledge proofs? You? Okay. So this is a really, really powerful tool set where we can do things like vote in a decentralized way, and there's a whole bunch more assurance that's around using zero knowledge proofs, and we can keep our identity private. So really, really powerful. And Julian helped me create a little demo where we actually do decentralized voting using zero knowledge proofs as a way to learn. So I just did that at ASU. So, Scott.
Yeah, I'm Scott. Professionally, I primarily do DevOps stuff, programming. As far as, I guess, relationship with space, I'm primarily a Monero contributor, so mainly a lot of focus on privacy and security.
So if you're not familiar with Monero, you should definitely check it out. It is one of the privacy coins, basically, where you can do transactions that are private. And one of the things that's taken over ransomware, or sort of eclipsed ransomware still with us, but there's a lot of people that are having their computers breached for Monero mining. So it's a lot easier to make money by taking over somebody else's resources rather than going through the song and dance of holding them hostage for ransom and so forth. So, Chet, you're in cybersecurity. You might want to talk to Scott about that.
That's one of the favorite cryptocurrencies of drug dealers because of its privacy aspect too.
Willie, why don't you introduce yourself?
Drug dealer, no. But not far from it. I'm the official candy stalker.
That's
And I
right.
just stocked it up, so because it's drug right here.
We can thank Willie for all of our candy bars. They're keto friendly, by the way.
That's right. I'm a business analyst. I do requirements and test cases and testing. I'm in the process of developing requirements for a website right now to allow charities to receive cryptocurrency donations. And the lack of developers here is atrocious, and so they're all so busy. So I'm actually working with a blockchain developer in Russia to help me finish the requirements. And I've already submitted it for an Ethereum grant. Hopefully I'll get some funding for that, and we'll develop it.
Cool.
I can't stay long. I got something that came up, but I had to bring by the candy.
Well, you brought the candy bars. That's
That's right.
what's important.
I had to make sure you're stocked. So.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so it's a cool project that Willie's working on. If you're interested in nonprofits and helping them get funding, you definitely talk to
They all want money,
Yeah,
so why not cryptocurrency?
exactly. Cool. All right, Lindy.
Hi, I'm Lindy Smith. I'm the Government Relations Manager for Cronus SES. So we have our information up there, but we're an edge data protection company focused solely on servicing the U.S. public sector. So that's the federal, state, and city governments, universities, nonprofits. Here today with my colleagues and our great speakers. So excited to be here. I'll make one plug. On June 18th, this hasn't been publicly announced yet, but we just confirmed it today. We are going to have an expert coming in from Singapore, actually on blockchain. He owns a company called ChainStack, and he's going to be giving a blockchain one-on-one lecture, if you will. So if you want to come by, I'll make sure to send the details to Jay so we can send it to all of you. But it should be a really great event. We'll have good food and cocktails there as well. So be sure to come out.
Cool. Yeah, we can actually probably make a meetup.
Yeah, that'd be great. Absolutely.
Ernie.
I'm Ernie Holmborn. I'm a sales engineer for Cronus SCS. I've been in the backup storage industry for 33 years. I've got a little bit of experience there. And some of our products do use blockchain for validation of backups and files. So,
Cool. Great. Yes.
Hi everyone, my name is Eva Adams. I'm the HR director for Cronus SES, and I am a participant and facilitator of the Skill Bridge program, which you're going to hear about. And also, I don't know anything about blockchain, so I'm really interested in learning more about it.
Cool. Well, we'd love to have you join us when we get into the skills bridge.
Sure.
So, awesome. And if you want to do a blockchain 101 right now, you're welcome to, because you probably know as much or more than we do. So. All right, cool. I'd like to introduce Eileen Kane too. She does the social media for Desert Blockchain, and she's involved in some really cool stuff with STEM and youth education. Anything you want to?
Finished over 100 hours of science programming. I finished Comic-Con, now known as Phoenix Fan Fusion. So I've all but lost my voice in the convention here.
So
Yeah, talk about blockchain with the public and give us a new Batman.
Cool. Very cool. So, talk to Eileen about the STEM programs and all sorts of cool programs that are happening around youth and tech and so forth. So, all right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and going to start with Abe. Okay. So we're going to start with Abe McCann, who's with the Arizona Coalition. Abe, if you want to tell us about the Arizona Coalition.
Thank you. So my name is Abe McCann, as he said, and I work for the Arizona Coalition for Military Families. I am a resident native of Arizona, I'm a U.S. Army vet, and what I do for the coalition is I assist active duty military veterans and their family members access employment programs and employment assistance programs. So I do everything from helping people find both the help with resumes, interviewing skills, help people access programs that will pay for technical certifications. I help them access educational grants, and et cetera, et cetera. And I work with companies like Acronis and HR professionals like Ava to help find veterans and transition military members gainful employment. The primary way that I do that is through what's called the Skill Bridge program. And the Skill Bridge program is a Department of Defense program that is eligible, that is primarily designed for active duty members only that are within 6 months of separating from the service. So when you have a candidate that's getting ready to exit the service, and when they approach their command and they say, I would like to start working on getting a career when I get out of here, they have the opportunity with that commander's approval to work for a private company like Acronis as an intern. The thought process being that they work there for up to 6 months in an environment where the employer realizes that there may be some gaps in their skill set as it relates to what the civilian employer is looking for. And this program is aimed to kind of create a bridge between what they did in the military and what they're going to do afterward. This program is for every branch, regardless of where you are in the world. You are more than welcome to sign up. But the beauty of this program is that the participants themselves represent the top candidates in the military. So these candidates they're vetted everything from their PT score to their performance at their job to their record. I mean, they can't have any blemishes on their record at all if they want to do this. Once they get the command approval, they work with my organization to network with companies like Acronis and the other defense industries. And once we help them figure out, okay, this is a possible career path, then my company starts prepping them for that process. We provide training on interviewing. We assess any other needs or barriers they may have to prevent them from getting the job. And then once they meet the company, like in this case, they meet Ava, and they go through an interview process, they are formally given an offer. Now, the offer is contingent on meeting, certain performance parameters, which are independent of each position and whatever the task is that they're doing. And then upon that completion, if they're successful in their endeavor, they will be offered full-time employment. So that way, when they get out of the military, there's no gap of employment. And they transition into a much safer place where they don't have to worry about things like unemployment, job searching, and any of the other problems that may develop because of those issues. Adam here is one of the people that we put through the program. So take it away, sir.
Yeah, let me just begin by saying thanks to everybody for coming out. I know it's a Wednesday night, 6, 7 o'clock, so everybody's got things on their schedule. I appreciate you all coming out. Jay, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come here and speak. And then Eva and Lindy, I really appreciate you guys getting this set up. So long story short, I am a active duty service member, United States Army, Army Aviation, in the process of transitioning out of the military currently. So that window that he spoke about, that 180-day window, I'm in it. I actually begin my internship on June 10th. So culminating a 20-year career with the Army and then retiring, and then looking to kind of take that the next step and put my skills sets, learn what Acronis has, which is the great option of the internship, is that you get to take something new and blend it with what you're already bringing from the service. And then in the end, I get to continue to serve the country as we go ahead and secure the public sector. So win-win for the employer and for the employee. I can't speak enough about the DoD Skill Bridge program. One of the things with the service members who are exiting out is that they spent 20 years or 4 years or 8 years or 10 years, whatever their situation was, but they've been invested in one career and they've been loyal around one flag, for lack of better terms. So they're institutionalized whether they want to be or not, and they're indoctrinated in military. And so as they're exiting out of the military, one of the things they struggle with is, how do I establish those lines of communication? How do I interact with industry? How do I find out about these opportunities? And because of great guys like Abe McCann and his team and the Arizona Coalition, it brings veterans and industry partners that are looking for that talent, and it creates that union. And it allows for me to be here in front of you guys tonight talking about an internship that I'm actually going to be able to do. And it's just kind of funny how, life you never know what direction life is going to take you. So I started as military intelligence, doing electronic warfare. I was 17, wide-eyed, joined the Army, had no clue about it. Do that for about 7 years. Next thing you know, I'm Army Aviation. I'm flying. We're doing unmanned aircrafts. We're leading the drone program. We're watching that emerge. And then 20 years come full circle, I'm back to my roots. This is when I first came into the Army, where we were doing Linux, and we were doing Unix, and we were doing programming, and we were looking at the first steps to ethical hacking. And so when this opportunity came to me, and great people like Ava Adams approached me, it was a no-brainer. I watched a company whose core values and commitment were to serving exiting veterans, but then also had a commitment to protecting our public sector. And so for me, it was a match made in heaven. Thought, you know what? I'm committed to serving our country. I want to be able to take that, and I want to continue to do it. And it's near and dear to my heart to find a company that's got the right core values, that believes strongly in creating opportunities for exiting veterans, especially in this industry. When you look at the need, and you see that we're just understanding how far behind we are in the cybersecurity world. And we know that it's not going anywhere. The need for it's only going to continue to grow. And then you look at our ability to support that industry right now from a workforce. We're, I think I read something the other day, we're 300,000 employees short in the cyber world, just on the United States side. And so knowing that we have exiting veterans every single day, every single year, we're losing 250 to 300,000 service members that all come with a very technical background. And then you have this industry that's chomping at the bit to get good, qualified, trained people into it. And then you take guys like Abe and you put them together and you use an internship to bridge that gap that they lack. It's kind of a no-brainer. And I'm just, honestly, I couldn't be more thrilled to be here in front of you guys and learn from you, because I really don't know a lot about blockchain. And my extent of blockchain knowledge is that it's in the Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency world. But the applications for it are unlimited. And you start to really, I did a little bit of research, start to see how that's going to be used in the future. I think that the limits are, it's limitless as far as how we're going to use it in cybersecurity and edge data protection. So that's kind of a little bit about me.
And one thing to note just about the program, at its heart, the program is designed to take an institutionalized person that was indoctrinated. When you guys go to work at a civilian company, you go through onboarding, orientation, but you don't get indoctrinated. So when you have a military member, if they're lucky, they joined right after high school and they did 4 or 5 years and they got out. So they haven't been quite institutionalized all the way. But when you have a 20-year veteran that's retiring from the military, in many cases, that's the only company they've ever worked for. It's the only culture that they've ever known as far as workplace goes. And what makes companies like Acronis a great company is that they're not just saying, hey, look, we'll hire military. Yeah, we get it. We love America. What they're really doing is the company is committed to learning about that military lifestyle, learning what that culture is like and how the military operates, and creating not only an opportunity for gainful employment, but a transitional opportunity where that veteran transition into a safe place where people there are trained to understand why they behave the way they do. But the biggest thing that they're trained to do is get that military member to realize it's okay to admit, hey, I am kind of cool. Because in the military, it's always others before self. And a lot of times these veterans, we have these talents we don't know we have. And the key to being successful in this program is being in a situation where we can learn about those and we can foster those. And one of the things that Ava and her team does really good is they assess that military member for an aptitude and for abilities that are, not necessarily that technical level, which those help, of course, but they find those soft skills in there. They really do a good job of bringing those out and developing their candidates to be successful.
Cool. I would love for Ava to join us, if you would. I'll get you a chair.
Surprise.
So,
Come
watch
on
your
down.
step. I would love if you slide on. I'll just scoot over here. Put your chair there.
Person with me and everything.
So, I'm kind of curious, what are you looking for when you're using the Skill Bridge program and looking for people coming out of the military?
We're really looking for an individual who is dedicated, who really wants to learn and excel and grow. They just might not have the opportunity because all of their work experience and their skill set is in military language, which is a completely different language compared to the public sector, right, in the civilian world. So what I look for is I try to peel back the layers of the onion. What have you done? What type of skill set? So many of these veterans have leadership skills. They have technical skills. They have so many wonderful skills that corporate America is looking for. And there should be, and this is my motto, there should be no veteran that comes out of the service that does not have a good paying job and something that they love to do. There should be no reason. And I think with this program, it really is supporting our veterans and also helping corporations find that talent that we're missing. We're really missing.
Cool. Awesome. So let's ask if there's any questions at this point. Good.
Well, I have a question. So, having been prior service military myself, when I first got out, even as a 3-year active duty veteran, the persona was much different than it would be for somebody that's out of high school. You have a different kind of, I don't want to say PTSD because that's not it, but you have a downtrodden kind of attitude because you have that military lifestyle and kind of a shell shock, if I would say so, to public life, because it's so vastly different from military to the private sector. But at the same point, you bring, as a military member, a lot of other skills. How exactly do you draw those skills out? Because as military members, bragging, do push-ups anymore. So how do you get those skills to come out of somebody that would otherwise be hidden?
That is an excellent question. And you're absolutely right. Military individuals, veterans do not brag. I just assisted an individual who's going to be transitioning out of the military for 6 months. He had interviewed with one of our VP of engineering, and he did not do a very good job. The VP of engineering provided me with that feedback. I invited him to come meet with me specifically so we could do some mock interviews. And what I found was he wasn't selling himself. He doesn't know how to. So I was helping him. What are the skill sets that he's most proud of? If you're applying for this job, what do you think you would need to do to be successful at that job? And then he started connecting the dots. And I said, start telling me stories of what you accomplished as far as your skill set as it relates to this job. And he was just going off and telling me all kinds of great stories of things that he accomplished in the military. So I think what it takes is, it takes patience, it takes encouragement, and it really takes people who really care. I wasn't being paid for that, but I look at that individual and I say, you know what, that could be my family member. That could be something, that's someone else's family member. And just helping them a little by providing them with that feedback is going to set him up for success. Now, I did give him some homework, and I am going to test him out later. So.
Any other success stories?
To add to what Ava was saying, though, real quick, one of the things that her company has done is they've completed a process called the Arizona Veteran Supportive Employer Certification. And that's a program that's managed by the Arizona Department of Veteran Services that gives companies that are doing work similar to Acronis that certification. But what comes with that is training from the Coalition for Military Families. So we have trained Ava's team, and we have trained many other teams like it throughout the state with other companies to recognize when a veteran is going into that interview and they don't want to brag, those commercials, yes sir, no ma'am, every military movie, roger that, whoa, right? But when you're giving an interview with a civilian employer, really wants you to get further into detail. So one of the training that we do with the different companies is we train them how to react to that style of answering and really learn some techniques on how to peel the onion back a little bit. I will tell you that right now the program has been going in its current manner for 2 years in Arizona. We are the only state in the nation that has a memo of understanding between all the base commanders here in Arizona with the Department of Veteran Services and my organization that outlines the process for every serviceman or woman to participate in. The success story that you're asking for, I will just give you stats. The 2 years that we've been doing this, 88 people have gone through the program and completed it. All 88 are gainfully employed. Currently, there are 46 current applicants that are all somewhere in that stage. Either they're applying or working or getting ready to complete. And no other state in the country has that ability to say that. And the last thing I will say is we do work with HDS Trucking School, which is a technical school that is part of the program. And they are the current record holder for most placements. They have done 259 placements throughout the country for this program as well. So we are kind of like the flagship. We're trying to be the best. So.
Great program.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I figured since we're talking about security and the public sector has been in kind of the headlines recently, especially with Baltimore and just Blue Fort and whatnot. I was curious if, since you have sort of local presence here in Arizona, like how would you say Arizona stacks within the public sector in terms of security compared to, like, say, places like Baltimore or other states?
That's a great question. I think I'm going to turn that question over to Ernie, and he could possibly.
A couple of different things on the security side of things. The Arizona Technology Council.
Mind coming up? Sorry to pose upon you.
So the Arizona Technology Council is doing a lot of work in that area.
Yeah.
So the AC Technology Council had a conference a couple of weeks ago on cybersecurity. They had some fantastic presenters, including Brigadier General retired. As far as comparing to other regions, that's a little bit harder to compare. I think we're doing better than some as far as cybersecurity. From the Acronis side of things, we're more so in the backup space, endpoints, but also in the data center. And so part of my exposure in that area is kind of, I don't know if I want to say biased, but it is biased to the backup and disaster recovery side of things. Either from the public sector or from private sector, having the ability to back up your equipment, be able to reliably and reasonably restore that data necessary. So there are a lot of pieces on that side. But I would say we're definitely not below average as far as security is concerned. And there are a lot of chief security officers for organizations, whether that's Maricopa County or City of Phoenix or Mesa, that they are realizing that this is something that's critically important to them. They know that they're being attacked with phishing attacks, for instance. They know that happens hundreds of times a day per organization. And one person clicking on the wrong thing can obviously impact an organization. So that is definitely growing in concern, growing in everything that the organizations are prepping for and being concerned of. Of course, you get some that are further ahead than others, let's put it that way. Hopefully that answers your question.
But to add to that real quick, GPEC is trying their best right now, which is the Greater Phoenix Economic Council, is trying to make Phoenix the 4th center of cybersecurity in the nation. So they're at talks with the government about doing that.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, that was actually something I was going to mention. So our company, Acronis SCS, is in conversation with GPEC about different applied research centers here in Arizona that'll help develop technology geared towards solving those exact problems. And then also with the conversations that I've been having just a lot on the city council level, there is a lot of kind of forward-looking policies and budgets that are preparing and kind of looking at these malware attacks that are currently happening on cities and what these cities need to do on their individual level to help protect against that. So,
Let me, sorry to interrupt you. You mind?
Oh, sorry.
Step no, that's.
But I'll be quick.
Thanks, Andrew.
But they are, for example, in Scottsdale right now, they have a couple of different bonds coming up for the 2019 election. And they are putting provisions in there to increase funding for public security, a lot of which is laying the infrastructure for the cybersecurity to prevent these malware attacks. So it's definitely being more hyperly focused on again now, since there's a lot of headlines focusing on these issues. So it's good, obviously, to have more attention being brought in. We obviously want to help secure those problems as much as we can. So we'll continue to move, and hopefully they'll continue to use us.
Yeah. And if you're not familiar with, it's Baltimore, right?
Yeah, city of Baltimore.
So the city of Baltimore has been held hostage for ransomware.
Yeah, basically they can't use any of their services.
And it's been like 2-3 weeks.
Yeah.
18 days or something the
18
last time I checked.
days?
Yeah.
So the city of Baltimore is hamstrung from basically ransomware. And so I'd like to talk about a few points to bring it back to blockchain, and also weave in the veterans, what's advantageous about employing veterans in this blockchain and cybersecurity realm and cryptocurrency realm. So just on the cryptocurrency alone, that has ushered in this ransomware phenomenon. And now we have computer resources being subverted for or redirected for like Monero mining. You know, that's a big problem. So, you know, 10 years ago, we didn't have cryptocurrency. Now it's flourishing, and it's basically this economic incentive to take over and basically disable even a city the size of Baltimore. That's a big deal. So one of the things that comes to my mind about veterans is you're used to this adversarial construct. You're used to looking out and always assuming that somebody's ready to attack you, right? That is totally a fundamental piece of the foundation of decentralization and blockchain. Blockchain is different from the centralized realms in that instead of us like trusting some centralized entity to look out for our best interests, blockchain and this decentralization is designed where we have to take responsibility for our own safety and security, and we're always assuming that everybody else in the room would instantly take over our assets. That's a big difference. Okay. So other part that's a radical difference, and one thing I'd like to say about Acronis, they are building a $20 million R&D facility in Tempe that has a big blockchain emphasis. So when I first met Acronis, John Zanni, I was introduced to John via GPEC, the Greater Phoenix Economic Council. And, you know, right from the start, I could tell that Acronis was interested in Phoenix and Arizona. You're making a commitment. Reached out to Desert Blockchain for this event. And I think there's a opportunity for real collaboration, you know, not only in traditional cybersecurity, but also in what might be possible with this decentralized construct called blockchain. So, you know, that's part of the reason I'm really excited about this particular event tonight. But let me draw a couple distinctions between what's possible in cybersecurity and using blockchain and how that's different from, I'll say, legacy or traditional cybersecurity. So today, basically focus on something called perimeter hardening, okay? So cybersecurity, you go to any cybersecurity program, they are focused on, okay, we're going to harden this perimeter. We're going to check for phishing attacks. We're going to check for, make sure that all of our ducks are in a row and all that stuff to prevent the bad guys from getting in. But the fact is that once the bad guys get in, once they penetrate that perimeter, they're in. And they're going to go laterally across the different realms and basically glean whatever they can. It's analogous to this. It's like having all your information in a library, okay? And as long as you can keep the bad guys out of the library, you're cool. But if the bad guys get into the library, they pretty much got the run of the place. And, it's day after day we're seeing these breaches. So how's that different with this thing called blockchain and decentralization? Well, blockchain is much like freedom of the press. What do I mean by that? I mean that the information, the security, the trust is constantly being questioned, constantly being challenged, and it's just like a newspaper on every corner. If you want to change the content of the newspaper, you have to go out to every single street corner and change every single issue. And that becomes practically impossible. So that's a way that we can leverage this thing called blockchain, this thing called decentralization that is emerging. And if you have questions, please just raise your hand and stuff. But I'm going to make another analogy. And this, I've been told, shows my age. Maybe some of you are young enough that you won't even know what I'm talking about. But we used to have these things called phone books. Okay? A phone book. And a phone book, I think, is a good analogy for what might be possible with blockchain and cybersecurity. Okay. So phone books were these things, these big bricks that would show up on our doorstep like once a year, that would have everybody's name, or most of the people's name in the community along with their phone number. Okay? And when people moved and whatever, it would be updated the next year. So imagine that instead of this phone book coming out every year, imagine it's coming out every 10 minutes or even more often. And all it contains is basically like an identifier and a pointer. So that's kind of what blockchain is best used for, is managing these identifiers and pointers. Okay? It's not good for storing your data in the blockchain. That is not a good idea. But it's very good for keeping track of these pointers that go out to other like repositories of encrypted files or file storage. So you can think of it like, when somebody calls me, Lindy calls me, calls Jay on his cell phone and leaves a voicemail message, she's using my phone number to basically create a file that's only I can control, I can have access to via my password. And that file is, fairly secure, and I'm responsible for that security. But if, Julian wants to invade my voicemail, he might listen to one voicemail or two voicemails or whatever, but he's not going to be able to listen to the entire neighborhood's voicemails. Well, Julian's pretty good. He could probably figure that out. So that's kind of the way I think about this blockchain thing. Is number one is you've got once the phone books are published, you would have to go out and change every single phone book in order to spoof somebody or, breach somebody. And if you're only using the phone book to create these voicemails that we as individuals have the access to and control the passwords effectively, that's a totally different security model for data and so forth. And that's what I think is possible in this realm of experimenting with blockchain and cybersecurity and a whole new way of managing our data. And by the way, all the blockchain constructs that are out there right now are simply prototypes in my view. So the real scalable, the real workable way to utilize and leverage and bring blockchain, this decentralization out to everybody is still pending for innovation. And that's one of our big opportunities here in Arizona. Somebody asked about where do we stand in terms of cybersecurity versus other states. Well, I don't know where we stand right now, but one of the things we can leverage with this blockchain and with incorporating vets and Cronus and creating a collaborative space is we can start to build and experiment with what's missing in blockchain, which is the human interface. It's for the most part, it's pretty difficult to deal with the blockchain right now. And one of the big areas of innovation that's possible is making it easy so that anybody can use this new centralized construct. The other big piece, the opportunity that we have, is in the realm of policy. Because a lot of these blockchain decentralized constructs don't fit the square pegs. It's a round hole and a square peg for all the legacy rules and regulations and laws and so forth. And we need to utilize things like the FinTech sandbox to start to experiment. And one of the things we have in Arizona that's to our benefit, that's an advantage, on a global basis, we have these policymakers that are hungry to experiment in this way. And they're willing to sit down with us and listen in terms of, okay, what do the innovators need? How do we fit this into the legacy regulations? That policy innovation is, in my view, as important as any kind of technological innovation. And it's also critical that we figure out and we experiment with ways to introduce this to people that aren't technical. They don't want to learn what SHA-256 hash is. They don't want to try to manage their private keys. They want it literally as simple as listening to their voicemail. We need to create like a rotary dial interface for this new fangled, fancy bells and whistle blockchain thing. And that's one of the things we have an opportunity to do. So that's my little soapbox rant, but hopefully that pulls a few pieces together. Any questions about all that?
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Sorry, we can't keep my mouth shut tonight.
No, that's good shit.
So you've got blockchain that goes through on a cybersecurity standpoint, and I send off my signal to access the server off-site. Is it my explanation right on key with what you said before so far?
Well, not really, but keep going.
Okay, so I guess where I'm having the trouble identifying how you could use it in cybersecurity is at some point within the main server, the main hub, I have to identify that algorithm or that hash of that user in my database. So is that a fundamental flaw in that blockchain pathology, or am I missing the point entirely?
Julian, Scott, you guys want to say anything about that?
So, I mean, it's basically, as he was kind of hitting on earlier, it's consensus. So I don't know off the top of my head what Bitcoin the connection is, but for Monero at least, by default, you connect to or attempt to open up connections to 8 different peers, and from there you download the blockchain from them, and you validate the chain fits the certain parameters of whatever defines that particular chain. So it's not like I think what you were kind of describing was more like a client-server kind of relationship, where it's like one-on-one kind of connection.
Okay.
So this is blockchain for the most part, as it's commonly implemented, is basically a public peer-to-peer sort of network infrastructure.
And in what circumstance would I actually use that as far as encryption or anything? If I wanted to download private data or sensitive data from point A to point B, because usually when you're trying to move encrypted or sensitive data, it's from client server or client to client. You're not going from 15 different peer networks to get what you want. It's a point A to point B, not a point A to B through Z. So what circumstance would I use blockchain in that type of methodology?
So it's more like what Scott said is right on point, Chet. Our model of client server disappears in this blockchain space.
Okay.
And it's more like, what is the address that I can go to get an encrypted file that only I have the private keys to decrypt?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So maybe it's kind of like a token ring, right? So you got a token ring to get into this domain. When you're talking about the perimeter, use a token ring, right? And some code to get into access to those files, right? Well, with blockchain, my understanding of is it's a ledger, right? So you have a general ledger, and you have a chain of each. So say somebody makes a change to that file, or breaches the file, or maybe uses the token ring or breaches the token ring, there would be a number that, or again, I'm not on the technical side, but basically it puts in a ledger that there's been a change.
Mm-hmm.
But because there's so many people using it, because it's public or whatever network you are, they're going to say, okay, well that's a code that's been put in that somebody made a change to that ledger, and then it's chained by other people, because once one person puts something into the ledger, there's another entry in the ledger, another entry in the ledger. What you can do is you can go back and read that ledger and say, oh, well, there was a change in the ledger, and if it doesn't match. So when you look at the security part of it, I would say that it's more on, well, somebody's breached, and you can see, because you're going to identify it with somebody else, and like he was saying, and like you were saying, it's open, it's not closed, so it's open. Does that help understand it? So
Yeah.
So basically, you can
yeah.
see the different changes, and they're all chained together. If you go back and read the chain and where there was a breach, you can see that that breach came from this entry, and now you can go start to research the entry.
Yeah, it's basically like, it would be like keeping track of my phone number. You might dial my phone number, but if I've turned my phone number back in or whatever, right now that isn't kept track. You wouldn't know that. You might be talking to the next person that got the phone number, and they might be pretending they're me. But with this blockchain thing, you would be able to see that my phone number or my IP address or my internet domain has moved from Jay to Steve, or whatever. And I think so. The other. So I think it's going to mitigate the potential for man-in-the-middle attacks, for one thing, because we'll have a clear way to check that the address that we're talking to and the person or the entity we think we're connecting with is truly the entity we think we're connecting with. So imagine that man-in-the-middle attacks are diminished. Imagine that denial of service attacks are mitigated, because you've got this newspaper on every single corner that people would have to basically DDoS each one of those newspaper stands in order to effectively launch a denial of service attack. So those are two pretty big deals. But in your, you kind of have to trust me on this, Chet, and in the space, you should trust nobody. You should always verify. But it's worth, if you're in the cybersecurity realm, in my view, it's worth starting to look into this blockchain thing, because there are some constructs that are 180 degrees opposite from the traditional client server and centralized construct architecture that we've used in the past. And so, that's kind of my 2 cents.
No, and I'm perfectly happy. I'm sorry. I'm perfectly happy to look at a different kind of outlook on that entire thing. But you're describing a trust wallet methodology, not a cybersecurity methodology, as far as I can see. But I don't want to take up your entire conference, so I'm going to shut up.
No, that's great questions. Yes.
So one thing just to kind of show you how Acronis is using blockchain, we're using it to authenticate files and backups to prove that they haven't been changed. So we hash of a file and send that out to the Ethereum blockchain that we could then later validate that, oh, here, Judge, I can prove that this file hasn't changed. So that's just another, not directly cybersecurity, but another way, the way that we're currently using it, and of course looking at other ways as well.
Yeah, that's a key piece, is this is all built upon this hashing method where in this decentralized realm, if so much as a comma changed to a period in something as large as the entire Library of Congress, everybody would be able to detect that instantly. Just a comma to a period anywhere in the Library of Congress. That's huge, in my view. And for anybody that's watching this or that's interested, there's a set of blog posts by an entity called Coral Health that was published last year about this time. And they do a great job of showing how blockchain, something called, this hashing method, can open up a new realm of security and management around health risks, which could be legal records, which could be financial records, and so forth. And we've talked about that in some of the events. I'll post it on the meetup page, so I'll link to that. But that's a great set. It's kind of a great introduction to not only blockchain, but also the cybersecurity benefits of this decentralized stuff. So, Niles.
So I know you're saying like if you could, like, so you say like change one period, or you saying like what he was saying about like just hashing the file and uploading that to the blockchain?
You could create a hash that's loaded onto the blockchain, and that becomes like your telephone number. In the analogy that I use.
But so the issue with that is that you can't. You would have to upload the whole file to the blockchain or to verify word for word, right?
No. You only manage the hashes, which again is like the phone number. The file itself is stored off chain, but represented by a hash. So
a way of, since you do with open source, might be more. So like when you download a piece of free open source software, usually most of the bigger ones will say this is the hash, run the MD5 hash or whatever on your build and make sure that it matches what's on our website. And if it matches, in theory that your software is safe to run. So it's kind of a similar concept with the database. It's just a set of however many bytes that they throw on the chain, and then whenever they want to check it, they run the hash against your match to a diff.
Yeah, and kind of what we're all dancing around, we might not know it yet, but one of the big missing pieces in areas for innovation in this space is identity. And if we could figure out a more workable way to manage our identities, all of a sudden there's huge advantages in the cybersecurity realm. And things in this decentralized blockchain realm open up models where we can do something called multi-signatures, where it takes 2 out of 3 of us to transact something or open up a file. And that becomes huge because if something happens to Jay, then Jay's wife and trusted attorney could act on my behalf. And that's a big, big missing piece out of this whole thing. But that's contingent. That needs innovations in the realm of identity. And in the realm of identity, naming, addressing, numbering, and identity, which is the area that I really passionate about. Another big advantage of Arizona is we have the largest registrar in the world in our backyard, GoDaddy. And for a while, we had Network Solutions here, which is going to be number 2 or 3. So there's a bunch of people in this city and in this community that are steeped in the world of naming, addressing, numbering, and possibly identity. So that's another advantage that we have. Anyway, any other questions or comments? I think this has been a really, really awesome conversation. And I think we've kind of opened up some possibilities, not only in the world of veterans transitioning from the military to the private sector, but Acronis, and companies like Acronis being in this city. We're seeing more and more cloud service providers. We have autonomous vehicles. This is one of the capitals in the world for experimenting with autonomous vehicles, as well as drones. And it's possible to use this blockchain thing as kind of like an air traffic controller for all of that, where we've got this decentralized, addressing structure that is trusted to a high degree and could be used as a way for these things to start connecting and talking with one another. So that's yet another opportunity set. But, I just invite everybody listening to the recording or, here tonight to start thinking about, hey, how could we start to collaborate? How could we start to experiment? How could we put up a prototype, with ChainStat or something else? Play with a few of them. There's a lot of tool sets that are out there right now that we can, if we just come together and play with this stuff, who knows what's going to open up. And I think we've got some new opportunities to play in a kind of a safe harbor via the things like the FinTech Sandbox. And we've got some new ways to experiment with how do we collectively participate in the rewards of these things. How do we do maybe new token offerings, crowdfunding, things like that, so that, it's one thing to come together and collaborate. It's another thing that how do you determine, how do people prosper from it? And I think that's another issue. So I think we're going to wrap it up for tonight, unless anybody has any other questions. We're going to have another monthly Desert Blockchain session on the last Wednesday of June, and working with Lindy on that to see what we could create. And then July 27th is the Arizona Blockathon, so if you're a developer, please stay tuned for more information about that. I really appreciate everybody coming out tonight, being part of this, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, and there's ice cream and pizza.
So much, please.
So much pizza. Something to go.
So much. Take a box.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you letting us talk. Oh, and there's flashlights over there if you need to. So,